Morning, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School, back down here at the Pathfinder Outdoor Classroom on day 3. I'm not sure how this will upload on YouTube as far as how close they'll be together, but this is actually day 3 of our tanning processes. So we've got our 2 fox hides hanging up here that are drying, and they're still a little bit too wet to apply tanning solution to. But we have our possum hide that was soaking in the egg solution. It's been in there for about 18 hours, so it's been in there plenty long enough. So we're gonna pull that dude out, we're gonna rinse it off, wring it out really good, and we're gonna see what it looks like. All right, so let's get some gloves on here real quick because it is plenty cold out here this morning. We've got a weight on top of this, so we'll get it off. Set it off to the side here. Rinse it off in this rinse bucket real quick just to get the egg off of it. Now, this hide has been soaking for about 18 hours now in this egg solution. So we're gonna wring it out real good. Just like this. And as we're doing that, it's not gonna hurt anything. Let's start pulling on it a little bit, because we may have to do some of this pulling and stretching and then actually put it back in the solution a little bit just to get it worked into the fibers better, but I'm not so sure. It's actually looking pretty good. As we're wringing this out, we're stretching it. Now, as this thing dries, we're gonna need to continue doing this. It doesn't mean that we necessarily have to do it. Now you see this, there's a big thing that looks like a hole right here in the hide. That's not a hole, that's the pouch. This was a female possum, and they're the only North American marsupial, and that was the pouch. We kept that pouch intact when we skinned the hide, so we'd have it on there. Again, this is gonna be an example out here at the school, and something that I take to schools and things like that for kids to look at and events, so we wanted to keep it as intact as we could. So pulling on this hide, opening up these, stretching this out is what we want to do. It's not looking too bad, really. Move this bucket out of the way here. We're not really going to know till it starts to dry out better. So we're going to get this thing on a rack and kind of let it start to dry out a little bit. And we'll just take it on and off the rack a little at a time and stretch it as it dries. And that's the process of this, is to break this hide as it's drying. So we'll talk about that as we go. We got to be careful with that thin flap of skin we've got right there. That is part of the pouch. So we keep that intact and don't rip that when we're doing our stretching. But I'm going to do some preliminary stretching with it now, which will also help it dry. Wow, that's looking pretty good. It really, really is. I like it. We'll see how the head does up here. That's the key to some of the stuff when you're doing these hair-on brain tans, is how good the head turns out. How much meat you got off of it and how good and soft you can get that. All right, so I've got a coon hide right here that I just soaked yesterday to rehydrate. And he's still got some areas on him that need to be taken care of here. You can see there's still some fat here. And this is where this tool comes in pretty handy. If you've got a place you can prop up a flushing beam that you can get down through, you can still see the fat coming off of that dude. We need to get rid of all that. This tan right, or this hide here, my plan for this hide was to bark tan it. In order to bark tan it, we want to get everything off of it before we put it in a bark liquor, degrease it really good. I just rehydrated this coon hide yesterday from a dried hide. It's still got quite a bit of fat on it that I need to get off before I can continue the tanning process, going to the degreasing process next. But I want to bark tan this raccoon for you in a black walnut hull tanning liquor. I'm going to talk to you through that as well during this video series. So what I'm doing now is I've got this flushing beam propped up at this picnic table in the classroom here, And this is kind of allowing me to use this tool with two hands to just get the stubborn stuff off of it while it's still damp, to get this stubborn bits of fat off of it. You can see that tail split all the way down, but it's still got quite a bit of fat on it. So we got to get that off. And you can see spots up in here around this head that still have some meat on them. And that stuff needs to come off of there. To get a really good tan on this thing, we want that stuff off. And again, that's where this tool comes in really handy, because that will remove that stuff so it's not there when you go to the tanning process. Okay, so our Red Fox is tacky now and not dry. And we're going to use this NuTan Advanced Tanning Solutions on this. This is one of my favored ones because it seems like it works well. It doesn't make a big mess. The best thing you can do with this is wear rubber gloves while you're doing it. And just work this stuff into the hide with your hands really well. I usually leave it on the stretcher to begin with. Make sure that I get the face really good and saturated with this liquid. You want this stuff to almost be puddled up on here like a paste when you're done. Make sure you get those ears really good. Make sure you get the nose really good. All of that stuff's important. And then down here at the bottom where you've got it on the rack, you can kind of pull that stuff off to expose areas that you need. You've got to make sure with this, as you're doing this, that you get this stuff inside this tail area. It's really important that you spread that tail area out and get that solution inside that tail area. So I'll usually put a puddle down here at the bottom, just like that. And then I'll spread that tail open and I'll drag that stuff right down the tail in a puddle to saturate that entire tail. Pulling it apart as I go and moving that puddle down as I go so that I get every bit of that leather on that tail, and it'll kind of stay open for you once you get it plastered on there good. That tail will kind of stay open for you all the way down. And if I've got any hint of a tube left there at all, I'm going to open that up with a knife real quick so you can see what I'm looking at. But down here at the base of this tail, when I open it up, there's a little bit of an area right here that's not split all the way out. And I'll just take my knife and I'll get inside that and I'll split that the rest of the way down. Make sure it's opened up all the way to the end of the tail. And you can even pour a little bit in the tail if you need to, just like that. Try to keep gloves on the best you can while you're doing this, because some of this stuff is not stuff you really want all over you. Make sure you get a good thick coating of it all the way down that tail. That's going to be really important to conserve that tail. Then you can open these legs up. You can get this solution out here on the legs. Again, I just pour a puddle where I need it, and I work it from there. And I'll get the one side, and then I'll flip it over and get the other side. Pour myself a line down the hide. And start working it in really good. Make sure you get these flaps down here really well. Make sure you get around these arms and the armpits really well with this stuff. You want to make sure that anywhere there's flesh, you've got this tanning solution on. The lower lip, again, is another one of those really important spots you want to make sure you get tanning solution on. is around that lip area. There's a little bit of a bullet hole right there. We could have sewed that up beforehand, but it's a very, very small hole. So it's not gonna hurt anything to sew it up after the fact or before we start breaking the hide. Okay, once you get that done, you're satisfied you've got this entire hide soaked well with this tanning solution. Then you can just hang the hide back up and let that tanning solution set on the hide. And that's gonna take about another 24 hours. Now, if you're curious how much of this stuff it takes for hides, this bottle was brand new when I did that coyote hide at the beginning of this series. So I've used about a quarter of this on 2 hides now. This bottle's about 30 bucks, but they'll probably do 4 or 5 hides. When I get done working on a table, I generally take this degreasing solution any other bucket that I've used with the hide work, and I just wipe the table down really good.